In what ways does your media product use, develop, or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? A presentation by Lee Henriques. So the first question that I think we need to ask ourselves is what actually makes a movie scary? And I found this clip that I think kind of demonstrates it very, very well. He kind of goes through these two examples. There was a lights out film and short film that have this same corridor scene, and he outlines the kind of camera angles, the editing, the lighting, and the time length that makes the short film more successful, more effective in this sense.
Home invasion is a real-life fear, and when we're in our pajamas heading to bed, that's when we're at our most vulnerable. The short film really capitalizes on this idea, and it's genuinely scary. In the movie, we see an unfamiliar monster in a place we're already unfamiliar with, so it's not as scary. Those are the three main differences, I think. But you could go even deeper. For one thing, in the short film, the lady is always bright in the shot, so it seems more menacing when we can see her clearly while also seeing the ghost. In the movie, when the ghost is visible, the lady can't really be seen, so she seems more removed from the monster and the threat. I also think the ambient hum in the background makes the short film scarier. Also, the fact that in the short film, the lady has to walk through the hallway where the ghost already is. That seems scarier than having the lady already at the light switch.
So there's just a few things that he outlines, but I remember seeing this clip and thinking about all the finer details and stuff that we needed to add to make it more successful, more scary, more professional. And I guess the first thing that I want to outline is originality, and in contemporary horror compared to old kind of school horror, all the things that I know we thought as a younger filmmaking kind of team, all the little things that we thought about, and the availability of horror in our generation, in our cinema now, all the aspects of that we kind of compared to our own and our own likeness as fans of this genre as well. So the main kind of weakness that we thought about as a group was that these conventions are here for a reason, and they're familiar and comfortable with most horror audiences. You know what to expect, you know why you're giving your money to see this product, you know what you're going to get at the end of the day. And there's strength in that, but there's also kind of weakness in that. You know what you're going to get, so at the same time, you might want something new. However, these conventions are popular, they don't kind of create different audience within the same audience. Everyone there is kind of there for the same reason, be it to be scared, to have an adrenaline rush, etc. But changing these kind of conventions, creating an original breath of fresh air kind of product, it changes things. So it can be a different product in a genre of kind of overused archetypes almost. I don't know very well how to describe it, but I chose these 4 movies, which are contemporary horror films, to demonstrate this. And they all kind of follow the typical codes and conventions. They all did kind of badly for it. Which is why I think in our product, the theme motif we decided to explore using the doll, which is a little way of joining our kind of film product to old school kind of film products with the monster and the big kind of gore and the horror. I thought that was a nice way to kind of bridge the gap between the two while using the doll as a kind of conduit to get across our different kind of message of the film. I thought that within a genre that was so overpopulated, we needed something different, we needed something new. So the things that we used in our trailer, the kind of obvious ones would be the false sense of safety at the end of the credits when they're rolling, and then there's a jump horror kind of moment at the end with one of the antagonists kind of bathed in red, and it looks very sinister and it works very well. We've had lots of people see it, be excited about it. However, there is the kind of sense of, you kind of expect it almost. It's a very hit and miss kind of thing, kind of convention. And we also obviously wanted to create a narrative, and we used lighting in this way, creating a narrative from day to night. So it works out really smoothly within the trailer, and I think that the juxtaposition of the lighting as we're progressing towards the kind of grittier, darker scenes towards the end of the trailer, it works really well to generate this fear and this kind of knowledge of how this couple, these protagonists' lives are ruined because of the doll, and it creates a very well established narrative with these conventions of kind of these light scenes and then these dark scenes. Compared to last year, we were much more confident in our skills, much more able to kind of not have to rely on these little kind of fade to black transitions and stuff like that. We knew what we wanted to do. We had a very strong vision, and I think by using these codes and then kind of adding to them as well. So we knew we wanted to have these transitions be very, very different from typical horror film style transitions. We knew we wanted to have sound behind them, but we wanted to play with the sound. So what we did, we had this music box going throughout. It was a motif throughout the whole trailer. It was a sound motif. It kept playing. And we knew we wanted to play with sound. We even added a moment of silence in the screen. We had no dialogue throughout the whole trailer. We kind of played a lot with sound and how that added to our trailer as a whole. And then adding the credits between it as well, we wanted to create an almost stylistic sense of the trailer. We got inspired by, I know I did, by Rosemary's Baby and the opening scene and that, and how it was very kind of dreamlike and sweet almost, and it didn't go with the movie at all. And then the lullaby helped us find the music box that we used throughout the whole thing. And of course, the way that we challenged it was through this use of silence. We didn't have any sound bites, we didn't have any dialogue, we only had the soundtrack. So we kind of developed and challenged the codes and conventions of sound in typical horror movies through this use of not having any dialogue. And we wanted to keep a very mysterious, kind of enigmatic feel to the trailer, which I think older style horror films have more compared to nowadays. Nowadays, the trailers that we have are much more, they give so much away to the audience, trying to sell themselves due to how many horror movies there are out now. There's so much competition. I think they kind of try to throw everything away. And to kind of pull in an audience, they give all the best moments of the trailer within itself. I would play this, but I don't think we have that much time, so I'll try to pick a good part of it if it works. If it doesn't, I'm just going to skip. Okay. And then for our film poster, we were kind of more unfamiliar with the film poster and the film magazine cover, so we were less confident and less comfortable challenging and developing the different kind of codes and conventions of typical horror film posters and film magazine covers. I think generally we kind of stuck to typical conventions, kind of having these sharp colors and then a muted background. The doll is in the center with the two protagonists in the background, and then the font is kind of atypical of horror films. Yeah, I think we kind of stuck to typical conventions, and I think our magazine cover did as well. I think it's less saturated with kind of text, and it's not as text heavy, but I think in general we kind of stuck to the codes and conventions of magazine covers and horror film posters due to being less confident and less knowledgeable about them. But in general, I think this still kind of makes for a very successful magazine cover and poster as well. If we look here, I think even if following all the conventions, I think it still markets our film in a really kind of good way, and I think it still kind of gives off that almost 80s niche stylistic feel to it. I think the only way that we really kind of challenged or developed it was by not having it portrait, having it horizontally. But even then, I think that's kind of a stretch to say that we challenged conventions by doing that. So I'd say that we followed conventions pretty heavily, having the masthead and the banner and then the cover lines and all the features. I think we stuck to typical conventions due to being less experienced, but I think it still makes for a really good a really good magazine cover, and then a really good poster as well. Here. Yeah, if you look at all these kind of typical examples, there's a surprisingly amount of color and saturation in it. And then in our one, I think we followed a lot of the typical conventions. Yeah. So throughout our trailer, I think we were much more experimental. There are kind of more different shots throughout it. We were much more comfortable kind of expanding our knowledge of filmmaking within a camera sense than we were within a like photoshopping and creating a different kind of product in print or in through horror trailer or magazine cover. And I think that kind of outlines the main ways that we used, developed, and challenged the forms and conventions in real media products. Yeah, I think our trailer is probably the strongest of the three, just because we were much more comfortable and much more experimental with it than we were. It's not as if, our magazine cover and our poster were an afterthought, but we were definitely less experienced in creating this kind of media product. So by following the conventions, again, it gave us a sense of security. It made us feel kind of more secure in our product if we follow these conventions, because we knew what they would do and we knew the effect that it would have, which kind of follows up on the point where these conventions are here for a reason, and you can break them and you can challenge them, and that's great if it works out. And I think our trailer kind of proves that it does kind of work out to not have sound bites, not have dialogue, and change things up. But with our poster on our magazine cover, we just weren't as comfortable with that. So that's the way that my group kind of used, developed, and challenged forms and conventions of real media products in the horror genre. I think I've outlined a few examples of how we've done so within our trailer, less so within our poster and magazine cover. But overall, I'm pretty happy with our package. In general, I think that they still market our film well. Yeah, I think they still do a kind of good job of representing the film, but ultimately it's the trailer that we focused more on and were more experimental and developed and challenged more so than used typical conventions.